Welcome to It's Your Job, featuring Dr. David Schein, one of the country's top experts on your workplace. The show covers employment and human resource issues. It's Your Job is presented by Claremont Management Group. Now, here's your host, Dr. David Schein.
Good morning. This is David Schein. Welcome to It's Your Job. This is a show about the workplace. We talk about things that involve employers, such as employment policies, discipline. We also talk about challenging issues like whether employees should be classified as independent contractors or as true employees. We've talked about the minimum wage, a variety of discrimination issues, including disability, race, and sex. We'll be glad to talk about those issues with you. We also wanted to invite you to call in and talk about issues that are important to you, even if we have not yet covered them on the show. I also want to try and provide a little bit of an oasis in the vast AM radio talk show genre, and that is that we're providing a non-political show. We do our best to keep this show as far from politics as possible. You get lots of politics on other stations, so the idea here is if you're tired of listening to all politics all of the time, this is a great opportunity to listen to a show that talks about something of relevance to an awful large percentage of our population. And that's people who work or people who have their own businesses, large or small. We're glad to hear from you. Governmental agencies, nonprofits, glad to hear from you. And so we want to make sure that that is something that's a resource for you as you move through your work week. We also want to mention that your host is not a recovering addict. I was listening to Imus in the Morning, who precedes us here, and of course his prior problems are well reported. We're not here to deal with our own angst. We're here to deal with your angst. This is It's Your Job. And it's your job as an employer to know what the laws are, to know what the policies and procedures could help your business run better. And if you're an employee, to know what your responsibilities are as an employee, but also what protections that you have, whether those are union rules. Our laws in the United States are designed to help employees establish unions in order to deal collectively with their employers, to be protected by a multitude of employment discrimination laws that protect people for a variety of classifications, including age, race, religion, sex, so that we welcome you to call in and talk about those issues also. I want to remind our listeners that you're listening to It's Your Job. This is David Schein. Join us, 788-0990.
Taking what they're giving because I'm working for a living.
Tired of the same old talk on the radio? Would you like to try something different? This is David Schein inviting you to a new experience in radio. It's Your Job is a show about your workplace. Entertaining and informative. Listen following Imus in the Morning on WLEE News Talk 990.
I get no doubt.
You know, that could be a great lead-in song for our guests today in talking about Southwest Airlines, because what many people may not realize is that the early history of Southwest Airlines was indeed a troubled one. The big national airlines did not want to let Southwest Airlines get into the business and get into the market and mess up their party and controlled rates and things like that. And so they had some real significant struggles. We have with us James F. Parker, who wrote a new book called Do the Right Thing, How Dedicated Employees Create Loyal Customers and Large Profits. And he is served as the CEO and vice chairman of the board of Southwest Airlines from June 2001 through July 2004, which, of course, included the critical period during 9/11. And I want to welcome Jim to our show.
Yes, absolutely, Dave. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. As we talked about just a moment ago, I have strong ties to Texas. I understand you're in the Dallas area, correct?
I am in Dallas, and it's a beautiful, crisp morning in Dallas. Our first real freeze here.
Well, we've had, up here in central Virginia, we've had a few freezes so far. In fact, we're expecting to have a very cold weekend.
And I bet if you were flying Southwest Airlines, at least we got you where you were going safely.
Jim, your book starts by talking about the history of Southwest Airlines, and we want to focus on the employment sector, but maybe you could give us about a 2 or 3 minute introduction to how tough it was to get Southwest Airlines off the ground. And I know you weren't there at the beginning, but you got there pretty quick after during a period of very rapid growth. Before you became CEO, of course, you were part of their legal department.
Right. Well, just a quick thumbnail sketch, and I think it really does relate to the culture of the company that has survived for so many decades since. But Southwest was really started as a deregulated intrastate airline within Texas back in an era when the airline industry was heavily regulated by the federal government. The federal government told interstate airlines where they could fly, when they could fly, how much they could charge, and so forth. As you would expect, any kind of industry where you have that kind of public utility regulation, the service was poor and the prices were high. And the incumbent airlines really didn't appreciate the competition from Southwest. They thought the idea of competition was somehow un-American. But because Southwest was a purely intrastate airline, it was not subject to the federal regulations. So we were able to charge low fares and have frequent flights within the state of Texas. As the company started out, we're on a money-losing venture because the competitors really put the pressure on, and it reached the point after about a year of operation that Southwest had to sell one of its 4 airplanes to meet payroll, to raise cash. It was the only asset that the company had that was worth anything, really. So.
But it led to a very important change, which I thought had, when I read your book, I didn't know that the 10-minute turnaround was a development of Southwest Airlines. I thought when the airline was set up that was part of it, but that was actually part of the sale of that 4th airplane, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was born of necessity, and really what happened was the employees got together and figured out that they could reduce the turn time of the airplane from about 45 or 50 minutes down to 10 minutes. It took a tremendously coordinated effort with employees operating with great precision, doing their jobs, knowing how the person next to them was going to do their job. Everything had to happen in the right sequence, and everybody really had to operate as a team. But by doing that, they were able to operate as many flights with 3 airplanes as they had operated with 4, and it really kind of set the tone of operational efficiency that has permeated the company ever since.
One of the really premium issues with such a difficult job market today is job security, and I think more so than pay that Southwest Airlines has distinguished itself based on job security.
Well, that's absolutely right. I think that's an important part of the culture. And when you have tough times, as we have now, and as we certainly had after 9/11 in the airline industry, I think that's when when a company defines itself and defines its priorities. Southwest was the only major airline, of course, after 9/11 that made the decision not to furlough any of its employees or not to impose or even allow pay cuts. The only people who took pay cuts at Southwest were the executive officers and the board of directors who gave up their pay to make sure we'd have enough money to pay our other people.
Well, that sounds like a very honorable thing to do, and I when I read that in the book, I knew that Southwest Airlines had hung tight. I had tickets for September 12th of 2001, so I was directly impacted by what happened that day, although fortunately I wasn't one of the many people who were up in the air, and I know even for a short-run airline like Southwest Airlines, it wasn't like, oh, it's okay, just finish that trip to San Antonio. They told you put that plane on the ground wherever it was, right?
Wherever it was. That was when the word came that the second airplane had flown into the World Trade Center. We got word from the FAA that every airplane in the sky had been ordered to land. It didn't matter where it was or where it thought it was going. If there was a piece of concrete under it, it was to get on it immediately. And it was a pretty tense time because, as you know, airplanes fly through areas of airspace where they're not in immediate contact with the ground.
Yes.
It was a little tense until we could establish contact with all of our airplanes and make sure that they had landed, because nobody knew how many terrorist attacks were really planned for that day.
Right, and in fact there were more planned, and of course no one knew until after the fact that Southwest Airlines, because of the short-run nature of the airline, wasn't really the type of plane that these terrorists were looking for.
Well, that's true. They did hijack larger planes, but ours are certainly large enough commercial airplanes. The 737 is
sure
the most widely flown commercial airliner in the world. But we were a little nervous. We didn't know what was going on, and it was a great sense of relief when we established contact with all of our people, and it allowed us to grieve for a moment over the terrible tragedy that had happened that day, but we didn't have very long to grieve because we had to start making business decisions right away.
And you had to figure out how to get the people back to wherever they were supposed to be without the opportunity to fly the planes. And the planes were grounded for, about 48 hours?
It was, I think, the 14th of September before we were able to get our first airplanes back in the sky.
So 72 hours.
Yeah.
Well, Jim, let's switch back to something a little bit more levity to it. You mentioned the whiskey promotion, and I gave you a minute and a half to tell our listeners about the whiskey story. I mean, I knew the story, but I read it in the book, and it reminded me of what had happened back then.
Well, I just love the story. It was in 1973, and Southwest was approaching the point where it might break even. The largest airline that was trying to run Southwest out of business was named Braniff, and they decided they were tired of this foolishness of having to compete with Southwest and its low fares. So they introduced an unrestricted $13 fare between Dallas and Houston, which was Southwest's best route, knowing that nobody, not even Southwest, could make money. So Southwest folks came up with a creative solution that made headlines all over the world. The next Monday morning, the newspapers of Texas were filled with double-page ads. The headline, "Nobody's going to shoot Southwest out of the sky for a lousy $13. And there ensued a lengthy letter from Lamar Muse, who was then president of the company. But we couldn't survive charging $13 fares. Nonetheless, if people thought $13 was the right amount to pay to fly between Dallas and Houston, come on, and we would be happy to fly them for $13. But if they thought Southwest's low fare of $26 was a reasonable price, if they would pay us $26 when they got off the airplane, we would show our appreciation by giving them a free bottle of whiskey. And for a time, Southwest became the leading liquor distributor in the state of Texas. And the stunt backfired on Braniff so badly that people rallied to the cause of Southwest Airlines and really embraced it as their own, and the company became profitable that year for the first time, and it's been profitable every year since.
Up every morning just to keep a job, I gotta find my way.
How about some good news? I think good news would be a great idea. And this is from the Sunday Times Dispatch from November 9th. And how about businesses that are expanding? This is a great article. It's by Bill Giroux from Newport News. While parts of the U.S. economy lie in smoking ruins, the city of Newport News is basking in the warmth of two huge economic development projects that promise a total of $1 billion in investment and more than 1,500 jobs. That's some big numbers there. So not all of the news is bad. And we want to make sure that people... I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to tell you, we have Michael on the phone. He is a former Circuit City employee. Michael, you there?
I'm there. How are you guys?
I'm doing just fine. Michael, what type of job did you have?
Senior management for services.
Were you part of the layoffs we were discussing that happened on Friday?
I was absolutely part of them.
Okay. And did you have any advance warning?
So we didn't have advance warning about the stuff that was going on at corporate. We had just finished completing the stuff at the stores the week before for the 155 stores.
Yes.
So, and in fact, after the 155 stores, we had an all-hands meeting where that question was asked directly to the leaders of the company. And they looked you square in the face and told you no.
How did you feel about the way things were handled on Friday?
You know what? They didn't have enough HR people to go around. So they started using any manager that was still around. So if you were a manager and you weren't on that list, you were supporting that effort. But there just simply wasn't enough HR managers to go around.
What does that mean? In other words, how were things handled inside the building?
Either your direct report or another manager came to your office and they basically got you and read your script that said Circuit City was downsizing the workforce and your number's up, so have a good day. The person then walked you back to your office or your desk and allowed you to get your personal items and escorted you out the door.
Now, were there any police involved inside the building watching people leave?
Absolutely. There were police there checking boxes. I don't know if they were doing it randomly or if you had more than one box. I don't know how they chose who they searched, but there was absolutely Henrico County police officers.
How did you feel about the police being there?
I understand it. I mean, you got a situation that's very unstable, and you never know what people are going to do. From a safety standpoint, it didn't bother me, but I wasn't one of the ones being searched either.
And what type of benefits were being given to people? Oftentimes when large companies do layoffs, they provide a reasonable severance plan. Was there any type of severance provided?
So And that particularly what sparked my call. All the associates were giving, we really weren't laid off. We were told we were still employed until January 9th and that your position would be going away as of January 9th. So you were told that you could still use your employee benefits, everything was in place, your discounts, whatever you wanted to do. You were an associate until January 9th, and you would continue to get paid. They made it very clear that it was not a severance package.
That's kind of interesting. I know why that's done, because it allows you to keep your employee benefits, which are a very significant part. But basically, this allows you to work from home. Is that correct?
So they didn't give me that option, and none of my counterparts who were let go had that option. You were just told you would continue to be paid until January 9th, but you didn't have to come into the office, which was odd to me because, unless you're at risk of some type of safety or leaking information, why wouldn't you have the associate work? I mean,
Yes.
You're going to be paying them. Why not have them work?
Well, especially if part of the problem is is cash in general, right?
Definitely a cash in general, and I think you guys spoke about it earlier. Our biggest issue was real estate. I mean, we got 20-year leases out there in some areas.
And do you think that the Chapter 11 filing this morning will provide some relief there?
I think it'll absolutely provide some relief to the company, but I just don't. The problems that we had at Circuit City go beyond the real estate. I mean, I have a report on my computer that says just as of last week, our mystery shops still put us in a bottom percentile in key aspects of retail, i.e. addressing the customer, making contact, solving for their needs. I mean, all the things that retail 101 says you greet every customer with a smile and you ask them what you can do for them to make their purchase better. We don't do that. That's been a problem from the top down. There's been no accountability whatsoever as far as Circuit City retail. I mean, we have RVPs who are going back to the field after failing to get those markets in order. On Friday, we went down from 8 markets down to 5, and some of the RVPs were let go, and then that also happened on a district level. So
now, Michael, you're using an acronym which I don't understand. If I don't understand it, the rest of our listeners don't. What's an RPV or?
So a regional vice president. So a guy who's in charge of, say, the West Coast.
Okay.
So we lost several of those, but we still have ones that have failed in the past who are still around. There's not many outfits you can go to and be unsuccessful and retain your job. From a district level and from an RVP level, Circuit City has never been able to get that right.
I want to mention our caller is Michael from Circuit City, is one of the many people who were sent home on Friday. And contrary to reports, you were not laid off on Friday. You were told you could go home for 2 months and you'd be paid and get full benefits until January 9th. Is that correct?
Absolutely, and in fact, I have the letter in front of me. It's kind of odd because for 2 months you can go out and find another job. I wanted to be upset, but I couldn't. I'm out looking for a job now.
And with that, we want to invite you to stay with us for It's Your Job, and we have Marshawn Evans, author of Skirts in the Boardroom, coming up.
Employers, now is the time to stop procrastinating and produce that employee handbook you've been thinking about. You already know that employee handbooks help you to make your company more productive. Businesses on the right track keep their employees informed. You will also have more success with administrative agencies like the Unemployment Office if you have a properly prepared employee handbook. Call Claremont Management Group at 595-0661. Their experts will help you prepare a book tailored to your company and your industry. That's 595-0661.
As promised, we have with us Marshawn Evans. She is perhaps best known nationally because she was a contestant on the 4th season of The Apprentice with Donald Trump, and she may want to tell us a little bit about that. She was a former Miss America Top 5 finalist, but importantly, she is an entertainment attorney and founder of ME Unlimited, a corporate consulting firm specializing in peak performance diversity and in developing life dynamic leadership strategies for women. A fascinating book. It's called SKIRTS in the Boardroom. And welcome, Marshawn Evans.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
And thanks for being willing to join us. Marshawn, we have limited time. You've got lots of great information in your book, but I wanted to just ask you to talk a little bit about your past experience. And you obviously got national attention when you were on The Apprentice. Do you feel that that helped you or hurt you from a standpoint of career credibility?
Well, I believe that The Apprentice it's certainly a reality show, but it's different, I think, than most reality shows that are out there. I believe that people were fascinated with the show because it was really the first business-oriented show of its kind that gave people an opportunity to really insert themselves in the action and ask themselves, what would I do if I was in this scenario? And it caused the viewer to analyze whether they would make a different decision, whether they could do better than the project manager who was leading the task at the time. And so for me, I liken the experience to the equivalent of a crash course MBA. And you're competing with some of the brightest business minds really in the world. There's over 1 million people apply and only 16 to 18 get on. And so you certainly have to be different. You have to stand out. You have to distinguish yourself. And I think people respect that. And so I believe that The Apprentice was a different experience that actually adds more credibility to you outside of TV world in the real business environment because I think of the competitiveness that it takes to get on and stay on.
And Marshann, you mentioned an important point here, and since you brought up the fact that it was kind of like a crash course in an MBA. While you were getting your law degree at Georgetown, you mentioned that you considered getting an MBA, and you had a kind of an interesting encounter there, something that might not have happened to a male law student.
Yes. I was at Georgetown, and one of the things that Georgetown offers, which is wonderful, is a variety of joint degree programs. And during the first week, they had an orientation that gave us information about other career options, and the one I wanted to attend was the MBA program. And so in sitting through the orientation session, I talked with one of the deans in admissions, and I told him of my interest and my intentions to apply for admission to the MBA program. He paused for a moment and says, well, you know, the MBA school is for really serious business minds. And I took that to mean that he didn't think that I should apply, and I don't know what he knew about me, if he knew I had already had my own business before law school. But I think it illuminates the point that women still are not encouraged to go into business, and certainly not to take leadership and highly competitive roles in the business world. And so, you know, I call that Ding Ding Dumbo in the book for a reason, but really it's more illuminative of a bigger issue that still exists in corporate America.
Thanks so much, Marshann Evans. Thanks for joining us on today's It's Your Job. And we'll be back with Challenge Discovery's Greg Huber. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Hi, how are you, David?
I'm doing fine. As you know, we've been talking about having you on the show for several months, and in the meantime, I have driven by the interesting collection of ropes and pieces of wood and wires over near the intramural athletic field at the University of Richmond. I say that as a way of introduction to kind of get people into the mindset of what Challenge Discovery is about. Greg, tell us a little bit about your early background. I mean, did you go to college saying, gee, I think I'll run Challenge Discovery when I get out of school?
No, not at all. In fact, my master's degree is in sports science, and really thought I might be going into more of a marketing area, which I happen to also have my hands in at Challenge Discovery. But
did you take over Challenge Discovery, or did you start it? I guess I'm a little confused about that.
That's a good question. Challenge Discovery's been around for nearly 30 years, and if I had started it, that would mean I started it when I was about 15. So I did not start the organization. It started as a nonprofit organization that was serving youth at risk. It was not a great business model. In other words, it wasn't succeeding in that nonprofit status. So I ran it still as a nonprofit, but really changed the focus of Challenge Discovery and had the opportunity to take it over and make it a private, for-profit organization. And we're now serving about 10,000 people a year through our division at Challenge Discovery, and we're running about 250 programs each year at Challenge Discovery, which is a far cry from the probably 20 or 25 we were doing back in 1989.
Greg, when you started with Challenge Discovery, you say that you were working primarily with youth that were troubled or challenged. In the period after you took over in 1989, how did you go about switching the company over? Did you go to companies? Did you go to like the Red Cross and United Way and say, hey, we've got this nonprofit, but we could run more people through it? I mean, what was the pitch?
It's a really simple thing, and I wish I could say there's more to it than what it really is, but I felt strongly and had a lot of passion for what we could do. My goal was to figure out how we could have a potentially life-changing experience all in the course of a 4 to 7 hour program. I knew and I believed in what we could do. example. What we did was we went to schools, churches, other community groups at the time, and a few corporations and said, here's what we do, gave our pitch to them and said, we're not going to charge you anything. We just want you to come out. What I realized all along is that we're not selling shoes, we're not selling TVs, we're not selling a product. What we expect to achieve at the end is an emotional response from our participants. They're either going to go home and they are going to talk about it. They're either going to talk about it positively or negatively. There's no middle ground. We know that you're going to have some kind of a slap on the side of the head experience, and we felt that it was always going to be positive. So our approach was to get people out there and have the experience.
You've been listening to It's Your Job with host Dr. David Schein. Join Dr. Schein Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. following Imus in the Morning. It's Your Job, informative, entertaining on WLEE News Talk 990.